One of these days, you're going to be out of your business. You're no longer going to be CEO. You're no longer to be an executive in the company. What do you want to do with the last 40 years of your life? I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to go around the world and be asked to share what I know.
I was scared shitless of public speaking. I really was. It was not my forte. Today, I get on with passion and excitement. I actually enjoy that energy.
And I'm looking at this guy, this old guy, and I'm sitting there thinking, it's like, how am I going to help him? Go around the world, meet interesting people, share what you have to, but learn and grow and meet cool people for the rest of your fucking life. That's what you're building. You're building something that you'll have available to you for the rest of your life.
Keith, welcome back to Moonshots.
And we're back.
Yeah. So last time we spoke about writing a New York Times bestselling book, and in particular, writing a book. Right. And one of the things we talked about was people who write a book because they want to make money don't realize you don't make money on books, you make money on speaking. Today, I want to talk to you about something that you gifted me, which was advice on how to build a speaking business, a keynote speaking business, platform speaking business, which has been financially very meaningful to me. It's given me the cash flow to allow me to start my companies, putting me in front of audiences around the world. And so we're going to go deep into that. Anyone who's listening who's ever thought about being a speaker, has watched people like Tony Robbins on stage and said, wow, he's amazing. How can I do that? So we'll dive into this, dissect it, and like we did with our How to Write a New York Times bestselling book, let's give a 101 on the process.
Yeah.
You in for that?
I'm excited about it, and I think it's meaningful. What I love about what we're about to do is, I've done a couple of things really well. One of them is I've published, and another is I've built a very thriving speaking business. And I love it when I get a chance to be the usher of another person into that realm. There's a lot of dark twists and turns and things that people don't know and misconceptions. So why don't we give people some light in this process?
In the same way that you gifted that knowledge and literally opened up your Rolodex and made introductions and told me what does and does not work. Looking forward to gifting that information to everybody watching here.
Done. Let's do it.
So, I had just published my book, Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. And I had lunch with you. And we had just met. We had probably met at a conference, both speaking at TED. And when people ask me about you, besides being an extraordinary executive coach, an extraordinary speaker, an extraordinary thought leader, you're one of the most generous people I know. And I love you for that, truly. And you literally took me under your arm and said, I'm going to teach you everything I know about speaking. And you opened up your phone, you made some introductions, you gave me key advice. And it was an inflection point for me financially, but more than the financials, it was building my brand in the world. Yeah. Because when you're on stage, and by the way, people treat you very differently if you're giving them a free keynote versus a paid keynote. Very different. We can talk about that. So let's dive in. Let's open up in the question,
well, what was the takeaway that I'm curious, if you reflect on that, what was the takeaway that you walked away from that conversation that was the most impactful or the biggest aha?
I remember when I started doing my keynote speaking, we had all these different agencies that wanted me to go exclusive with them.
Right.
And one of them was, don't go exclusive with any agency. Yeah. Right? You can have them all working on your behalf.
Well, and let's explain that to folks.
Okay.
Look, there are a few people who do well to have an exclusive bureau, speakers bureau, and they are the people who are looking to maximize the per unit price and minimize their number of speaking days.
Right.
So back in the day when Jack Welch was a speaker,
or Hillary
Barack
Clinton,
Obama, Hillary Clinton, right?
Yeah.
And these people are being deluged with people, and I would imagine, people like Simon Sinek and Adam Grant today, et cetera, perhaps. That these individuals have more requests than they have time.
Yeah.
and they are trying to get their price up as high as possible, given a very limited number of days.
And
They've got 20 days.
I'm available these days.
Yeah, I'm available 20 days.
Yeah.
Although there's 500 people trying to get me on, and as a result, I want to get the highest amount. That's a great use of a bureau.
Of a single bureau where it's all funneled. They know the kinds of gigs you like and don't like.
Right.
And they know which days you're available and what your minimum price is. And because it's scarcity drives up the price.
But let's understand the business model of the bureau to understand why I would make that recommendation. So what a bureau does is they're working for the person booking the engagements. They're working for the booker.
So if you're running a conference and you're looking for a great keynote speaker on a particular subject,
you go to a bureau. So you're running your sales force.
Yeah.
And you're running the big dream force.
Yeah.
You have a bureau, or many bureaus perhaps even, who are looking to fill the speaking slots. And that bureau is looking for long-term revenue. They're going to work for Salesforce, hopefully for 5-10 years running. There are agents out there who have worked for this event for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? Their job is to fill that. So the fact that you happen to be exclusive to them, they'll put you in whatever they own or they contract with once, right?
Yeah.
But now what you're really trying to do is there's 8 other bureaus out there who are booking events for their clients that you want to get on their place. And if you're independent, you have a higher likelihood of lobbying those other agencies and bureaus than if you're wedded to just one.
Yeah.
Right. And when it comes to the commission, right, if you're wedded to just one, a number of the speeches that will come into you that have nothing to do with the bureau, nothing at all. Because
they saw you speak, they read your book. They just call, and it's just...
You go to one bureau, 100% of those speeches will be covered by their commission.
Commissioned by that,
right.
Yeah.
Whereas there's an entire swath that you can get directly without paying the commission. The commissions can be pretty daunting, right?
Yeah, 20% is not unusual for it. I've seen 25%.
I've seen 25 as well, and sometimes even 30.
And by the way, you can negotiate that at the end of the day. So before we dive too much into the weeds here, I'd like to go back to the entrepreneurs watching and say, why do you even start a speaking business? All right. What is it that is the benefit, the why behind it? And there are a few different reasons, and maybe we can discuss that a little bit. I think one of them is you want to get your message out. You've written a book and you want to get your message out, and being able to present with your emotion, your energy, and an updated story, because a book is static once it's published, at least books in the past have been, being able to update it. So when I gave my abundance speeches in 2012, they're very different from giving that speech in 2023 because the data is so much more compelling. So it's getting the message out. Another reason?
Well, let's go back and put the hat on of the person we're speaking to here.
An entrepreneur.
Right. Well, perhaps.
Okay.
That's one audience. There's an audience that says, there's a group of individuals who just dream of being a speaker.
Sure.
Right?
It's
something that's what they want to do. In fact, that's kind of where I was. If you don't mind me giving a little bit of backstory. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. That's what I wanted to be. And I actually was. When I was 12 years old, I went to a summer stock equity theater, which is professional theater. And my parents let me do this at 12 years of age. I spent the entire summer as a child
my boys are
actor.
12 now. I'm trying to think about what I would do. Probably not that.
Right. My parents let me at 12 years of age live at a theater company for the entire summer by myself. Amazing. I had my own apartment, and I was playing one of the kids in Sound of Music for the whole summer. And it was equity. It was a professional theater company. And what I noticed back then was that there were some amazing actors who were poor. And I said to myself, I can't go into a profession where if I'm really good, it has nothing to do with my success.
Right.
Now, what I didn't know was that what I did know how to do, which was to network and build relationships, would have probably made me an awesome actor. Because these folks who were really good and not capable of earning a great living was probably because they weren't playing the game and building the relationships, et cetera.
Building the brand.
Yeah. But at my point, I was just saying, I can't be an actor because I won't be successful. Now, if you think about what I was able to to do. I wanted to be an actor. What am I today? I'm on stages all over the world.
Sure.
Right? I'm in media all over the world. And I've actually found a more fulfilling purpose beyond being an actor in terms of what my mission and my purpose is to transform the way we work.
So give me the emotion you feel where you're on stage.
That's a great question.
Like,
you know what? It's different. It's evolved. Back then when I was a kid, an insecure kid who was poor, going to rich schools, didn't think I deserved to be anywhere, I suspect what I was looking for was significance.
Yeah.
I was looking for self-worth. Today, when I'm on stage, I feel effusively generous.
Yeah.
Because what I do, and this little trick, and I'm sure you do the same thing, before I go on stage, I do my research. I understand what I'm intended to do. I always ask myself the question, and then I ask my client the question, what would you like the audience to be doing differently 3 to 4 months after I've left because I was there?
The question I ask as well is, what's the emotional experience you want them to have at the end of this next hour?
And you and I, again, my whole brand is about doing and practices.
Yeah.
You know, you're about inspiring and potential, similar to what Tony does. Mine's about doing and practices. I'm very clear. I say, I want to make sure that by the time I'm walking off that stage, I have set a momentum so that your audience, a large portion of them, will be doing something different a quarter later, right?
Change.
Now, I feel effusively generous. And so what I do is
and you are.
Because I do
authentic from the heart.
I do a ton of research, which a lot of speakers don't do.
Yes.
I'm constantly complimented by the amount of research I do. And I ask them, can I speak to more of your people in advance of even showing up? I do phone calls, talking to leaders of the company. What do they want me to do as a puppet of their vision? How do I be of service? Yeah. But then what I do is
you're the channel, not the puppet.
Well, exactly. Thank you. Then what I do is the night before when I land, most speakers are like, oh, I'm just going to go straight to bed. I go down to the bar because that's where everybody is the night before the big speaking event. And I just shoot the shit. I'm like, what's really, by there, they're drunk. So it's like, what's really going on here, right? Tell me what's really going on. And I tease them out and they give me so much great information. Then I show up the next day and I go in the breakfast and I walk around from table to table. I sit down and say, hey, I'm your speaker today.
Yes.
You need to tell me what to say. I said, I'm writing the talk and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Oh my God.
I was like, I was like, here's my topic. Tell me what to say. And I swear to God, at least 25% of what I'm going to say on stage
will modify
is developed the night before in the morning of.
Amazing.
Based on those conversations. And it's all intended. And then what I do, last thing I do right before I go on stage is I sit in the back of the room and I look at the people in the room. And everyone's quiet and everyone's looking up at the stage on whoever they're talking to. And I am starting to get teary-eyed. And I imagine their life.
Wow.
And I ask myself, how can I help him? And I'm looking at this guy, this old guy, you know, is like a middle-aged guy, middle tier in the company. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's like, how am I going to help him? How in 3 months from now?
Wow.
And then I look at the woman over there and the young kid and the young, you know, woman executive and whatever it is. I'm looking at these people and I'm like, how do I help them? And now I'm fucking ready.
Now you're on fire. And buddy, you've been on my stage at Abundance 360 more and more every year, and people love you. I'll just put a plug in here, guys. If you ever want an incredible keynote speaker, Keith Ferrazzi is the best. And just you move the audience, you bring an emotional connection in a way that's extraordinary.
You know, I'm super passionate about longevity and health span and how do you add 10, 20 healthy years onto your life. One of the most underappreciated elements is the quality of your sleep. And there's something that changed the quality of my sleep. And this episode is brought to you by that product. It's called 8 Sleep. If you're like me, you probably didn't know that temperature plays a crucial role in the quality of your sleep. Those mornings when you wake up feeling like you barely slept, temperature is often the culprit. Traditional mattresses trap heat, but your body needs to cool down during sleep and stay cool through the evening and then heat up in the morning. Enter the Pod Cover by 8 Sleep. It's the perfect solution to the problem. It fits on any bed, adjusts the temperature on each side of the bed based upon your individual needs. You know, I've been using Pod Cover and it's a game changer. I'm a big believer in using technology to improve life, and 8 Sleep has done that for me. And it's not just about temperature control. With the pod's sleep and health tracking, I get personalized sleep reports every morning. It's like having a personal sleep coach. So you know when you eat or drink or go to sleep too late, how it impacts your sleep. So why not experience sleep like never before? Visit www.8sleep.com, that's EIGHTSLEEP.com/moonshots, and you'll save $150 on the pod cover by 8 Sleep. I hope you do it. It's transformed my sleep and will for you as well. Now back to the episode.
So going back to the why, right? So one is you can make a living.
Yeah.
It's good money.
Yeah.
You can promote your brand and your personal vision.
And the other one is you can start investing in your future. Every one of you is running a company today, or running a company today, having a team. One of these days you're not. One of these days you're going to be out of your business. You're no longer going to be CEO. You're no longer to be an executive in the company. And the question is, what do you do? What do you want to do with the last 40 years of your life? I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to go around the world and be asked to share what I know.
Mm-hmm. To teach. And
I want to be paid well, and I want to be able to pick the countries that I want to visit.
By the way, if you're able to make it in the speaking business, you will have opportunities around the globe.
Around the globe. And what I want my leaders, yourself, to be able to do is to say, okay, we're retired. What the hell that is? It's nothing. What that is you and your spouse get invited to go to Bhutan or to Egypt or to
Seoul, South Korea.
Right, wherever.
Dubai.
And you get to go around the world, meet interesting people, share what you have to, but learn and grow and meet cool people for the rest of your fucking life.
Yeah.
And that's what you're building. You're building something that you'll have available to you for the rest of your life.
The emotional experience I have when I'm on stage, and it can be an entire spectrum. And I know if I'm not connecting with the audience,
I'm sure it doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen often, but there have been times. And on the other end, I know when, I hate to use the term, I have them in the palm of my hand, I can feel
crushed it. You just feel
they're connected, right? And I've moved them from a state of fear and scarcity to abundance and optimism.
Yeah.
I moved them from in their mindsets that they have, in their self-belief of what they can accomplish. My MTP is to inspire and guide entrepreneurs, create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future. And when I can do that, I feel this incredible sense of fulfillment.
Yeah.
Right? It's awesome. One of the things that I do, remember I used to, when I started Singularity University, one of the things that Singularity did was it made its faculty amazing keynote speakers, because executives would come to Singularity, hear these faculty, and then, can you come and talk at my company?
Yeah.
Right? And so we help these individuals become extraordinarily successful in their speaking business outside of SU. And one thing I started doing was giving away all of my PowerPoint slides for free. I would, at the end of the deck, I would say, I didn't use a QR code back then. It was a website. Now it's a QR code, and say, if you want these slides, take them, share with your kids, with your friends. And, and people say, aren't you afraid these people are going to steal your content and give talks? If they can give a talk better than me, fantastic, let them do it. But it became a way, because to get the slides, they'd give me their emails. Maybe they're watching this podcast as a result of that.
Your movement, your community. We talked about this before.
And I have a connection with them, and I can keep the conversation alive. And I want, if I am heartfelt about what I'm sharing on stage, I want that information to go beyond the single individual to as many as possible.
Well, and let's just talk about that. Once you're done with your speaking engagement and you ask them if they would like the slides, and they give you your email, and you create some form of a drip campaign of generosity, just keep giving to them.
Always give.
If you're on their, what I always say is, if you're on their doorstep in a newsletter or something that just came in, at the time when somebody says, do you know a good speaker? or do you know a good coach, or
Yeah.
do you know a good whatever, then you'll have a shot. But it's interesting, you could have crushed it a year ago,
Yeah.
but just the day before somebody asked, do you know a good speaker? Some schlock walked across this guy's path. Guess who's going to get recommended? The schlock.
Yeah.
But if you don't have an ongoing touch point with these people,
To build a relationship.
and stay on the radar screen,
Yeah.
it's really important.
You know, a lot of people who wish to be a speaker, they watch amazing speakers on the TED stage or Tony or whomever, and they say, I could never do that. I'm fearful. I want to, share something for me. When I was in college in the early days, I was scared shitless of speaking, public speaking. I really was. It was not my forte. I remember I was running an organization called Students for Exploration and Development of Space, SEDS, which is still around now, many decades later.
That's awesome.
And at MIT has something called the Kresge Auditorium. And it was a massive auditorium. I don't know how many thousands of people it holds. And I was like, my dream when I was there my first year was, before the end, I'm going to stand on that stage and give a speech. And I had a chance to do that.
Yeah.
And face down my fears. Today, honestly, there's very little anxiety in speaking. I get on with passion and excitement. I actually, when I have any kind of anxiety getting on the stage, I actually enjoy that energy.
Yeah.
Because it's like, because a little bit of fear is like, okay, I got to change up my game. It's like,
And you and I will find stages where, like, I remember the first time I stepped on Tony Robbins' stage,
Yeah.
right? Or Radio City Music Hall, right? Just to speak at Radio City Music
Amazing.
Hall. Or a convention center in Ukraine,
Yeah.
right? That's that, you get those moments where you're like, holy shit, I'm about to go in front of 10,000, 50,000
Yes,
people, whatever
exactly.
it is. But let's spin back a second. For me, thank God my parents were religious, and I'm a spiritual individual myself, Christian. Speaking in the youth group at church was my first experience with speaking. I was invited as the youth pastor, because I was in the youth group, and I was invited as a youth pastor on Youth Day to be on stage with the minister sharing the pulpit. I then became, as I mentioned to you, I wanted to be an actor.
yeah, sure.
Right? So that was huge, to be on stage and just learn how to project and just learn how to have an audience and to be able to replay with an audience. All of that. And then what I tell you is, if any of you are thinking about this for your children, think early. Encourage your kids to take acting classes.
Yeah.
Encourage your kids. For me, it was a thing called NFL, National Forensics League, which is speech and debate in high school. That's what got me to Yale.
I'll tell you, my very first speaking engagement ever, I was 10 years old, and I sat my parents down in the living room,
Yeah.
and I went and gave a presentation to them on the planets. And afterwards, my dad came over and gave me $5.
Paid speaking
My
engagement.
first paid speaking
Yes.
gig. And it was like, maybe that was the one that influenced it all the way, but it was amazing.
But the point of, look, there are many of you who didn't have that, like the two of us did, where I had a lot of early training being on stage. The National Forensics League, Lincoln Douglas debate. Every Saturday, I was going to different schools and I was learning how to speak extemporaneous.
Debate is an amazing capability.
And extemp is fantastic.
Yeah.
You pull a topic out of the hat and
Nice.
then you're given. But if you don't have any of that, or you didn't have that background, but I would recommend for your kids you do, then Toastmasters. My dad told me early on that he had done Toastmasters. And my father was a steel worker,
Wow.
which I love about Toastmasters. People who want to be professional speakers, but people who just want, I don't know why my dad did it, but my dad was a steel worker and
So
did Toastmasters.
do tell more. What is Toastmasters?
So Toastmasters is a club. You join the club, and once a week you go and everybody takes turns getting up and giving little speeches or different types of speeches. I was actually blessed. My dad told me about Toastmasters, and Toastmasters honored me as their Golden Gavel top speaker in the world.
Amazing.
Yeah, I recently
Wow.
accepted that award, and past award winners were Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins.
Amazing.
You should actually be up on that for sure.
Oh.
But But it was amazing. My father, had told me about this when I was a kid.
What a beautiful close
And I remember
cycle.
I was crying on stage when I received the award because I only wished my dad had been in the front row. He had passed.
Yeah.
Could you imagine my dad in the front row listening to his son receive that? But I'm saying it's about practice, right?
It is about practice.
Now, there's different forms of speaking. I don't know about you, but when cameras and media started to happen, one of the biggest screw ups I've ever done in my life was my second book. I got on the Good Morning America. Mm-hmm. And I hope it's not out there anywhere, but I choked on live television.
Oh my God.
And I was petrified of cameras. Being on stage had a forgiveness about it, and it was long form. I could be on stage for an hour musing and talking and engaging with people. But when you put me in front of a little camera, I got terrified. I started sweating profusely.
You're doing pretty good right now, by the way.
I practiced. It was fun. My ex-partner, who you know very well, Stan, God bless him. Oh, I feel so bad. But because I was so terrified, he and I had a thing. This is back in the day when we didn't have iPhones. We had flip cameras.
Yes.
And so he would just walk around with me, and he would periodically pause, hijack me and say, flip camera. And he asked me a question. And it would give me the practice to get comfortable with that medium. Yeah. And we did it all the time. And I would get so upset and I would get so angry and I'd be so terrified. It took me years to be able to be in front of a camera.
Yeah.
So this was as an adult. My point is, if you're terrified of speaking in whatever medium, fucking practice.
Yeah, it is about
all
practice.
It is.
It's interesting. I started putting myself into situations where I was speaking. I had started in the middle of medical school, and after medical school, I was running International Space University with two dear friends. And there was the opening ceremonies and the closing ceremonies and in between. So I was giving speeches all the time. And I'll never forget an experience I had which taught me an amazing lesson. I was in Toulouse, France at the closing ceremonies. And here we are with our 120 graduates and 500 parents and friends there, and I get up on stage to try and give a inspiring closing talk, and I had a speech right there in front of me.
That's the worst.
And I started reading it, and I started just choking because it's like trying to make eye contact and reading it and and it was
just
awful.
Not us. Yeah.
And I literally put it down and spoke from my heart, and something flipped. And I've never, ever, ever had a teleprompter or speech. So my experience, I'm curious if it's yours, is I would make sure I had 5 to 10 maximum bullets. These are the things I want to hit on.
Let's do that. Let's get into the structure of
and
doing that.
I would, that would allow me to pick a subject. And a lot of times, my dear friend and writing partner, Stephen Kotler, talks about being in flow.
Yeah.
And when you're on stage in an audience and you're in flow and you're speaking from the heart authentically, people know it and you know it.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, what I do is, number one is at the beginning of a speech, you should very quickly get into a personal story.
Yes. Stories are critically important.
The biggest mistake I've made is when I was trying to give too much information, and I felt that this audience didn't want to hear my stories. They wanted the information because I was intimidated. Maybe they were scientists or they were very senior executives. But the reality is that if you don't capture their heart with authenticity through a powerful story at the beginning, you've lost them.
Yeah.
So that's number one, is to start with some form of a story. The next thing I always do is I always think of my talks as 3 sections. I don't know what they are, but there's 3 big sections.
Like in a movie.
In my talk, yeah.
Yeah.
And if I lost my notes, all I would have to have is 3 sections to memorize, right? Because I could flow through 3 things.
Yeah.
And then within each of the sections, I'll have 3 or 4 bullet points, right? So that's your point of 10 things.
Yeah.
Now, what I will do if I'm giving a talk that I've never given before, I will write out in 2 pages what I want us to share. Then I'll turn it in to 3 sections with bullet points. And between the time that I finalize what I think I'm going to say and the talk, I will take what used to be called recipe cards. Remember those little papers? I'll take a recipe card and I will write and rewrite my bullet points over and over again without looking at the last version. So I'll take a set of bullet points and I'll write them, and then I'll say, all right, put it away, let me do it again. And each time it'll get smaller and smaller. The number of bullet points that I need to remember gets smaller and smaller until I've really mastered the content and I don't need anything on the stage any longer.
I agree 1,000% on grabbing them with an opening story. It's beautiful, right? The thing that I've done recently that works really well for me as well is I have a PowerPoint deck.
Sure.
And the PowerPoint deck is mostly all image.
Yeah, pictures.
And a title across the
Headline,
top.
which is your bullet points. It's your guidance.
And so as I'm going through the deck, I use it as a reminder of, I'm going to tell some stories around this or some stories around this. Yeah. People are there to be entertained first and foremost. And if you can educate them on top of the entertainment, that's fantastic. If you just educate them without the entertainment, they don't get it.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And I feel like that regimentation and the idea that you're just going through reminders and nodes is important. Let's talk a little bit about rehearsing talks and things. There's an association. I don't want to embarrass them in my belief of what they do. There's an association of speakers that has a very strong belief on how a speech should be done.
Huh, okay.
And it's a very prominent group out there.
I'm going to start guessing.
Right. And they literally have the professionalism down to a science. You open your first remark here, and then you take 2 steps to the right and you have your next remark. And it's this crazy, meticulous formula of giving a talk, which I might imagine for somebody who isn't organically good at this might be a really nice way to start. But when I watch them, I have lost the humanity.
Yes.
And what I love about both you and I on stage, and certainly Tony, is what comes out is the raw nature of our passion and the message and the other, there's also a very famous place to give talks that they squeeze you into a box on how to give a talk there.
20 minutes.
And the way, I remember I was talking to Reid Hoffman, both he and I got coaching to do a talk. A TED Talk, right?
Yeah.
And we got our coaching to give a TED Talk, and we both swore that it felt like we were having the life drained out of us because it was so meticulous and how to give.
It's gotten worse in recent
all
years.
Of that. It was like, oh my God. And I look at it and I'm like, it was excellent, but the A pluses that I could have given if I didn't feel as regimented. But on the other hand, if you think about the average person that gets up to give a TED Talk, they need that, right?
The way I got pretty good, decent at speaking was modeling others. So I would watch Tony, right? Tony's a friend. We built companies together, written a book together and so forth. And I would, in the early days, watch him on stage. And I would watch him not for the content, but the delivery. His hand motions, huge hands. His voice inflections. And then I went on YouTube and on TED.com and started saying, okay, which talks really stop me and are like amazing speakers? And then why do I think they're amazing? What are they doing? And so I began emulating that. And one of the, some of the lessons learned just for folks listening here is I don't ever get behind a podium.
Never.
First and foremost. Never. Right? I'm in front, I'm bare naked. Second thing is I go to 11. What do I mean by that, right? If you think about
ratchet it up.
It's when you're speaking at a level of energy that you think is high energy, it's not that high in the audience.
Right.
And so I need to go higher.
But I add one thing. I go to 11 and I go to 2.
Yes, 100%.
Right?
100%.
The ability to go from there to then pause.
Yes.
And just land an emotional point.
Yes. And
that's
silence.
The inflection point and silence.
Silence is a huge exclamation point.
Yeah. And Tony, what I love about, sometimes I find myself after I've done Like sometimes when I'm doing Tony events, they happen to be like 3 in a row.
Yeah.
And for the next month, I find myself using Tonyisms. Like in the middle of the thing, I'm like,
Say yes.
Say yes. Exactly. Say yes. Say yes. It's like, and so to have that, so I find myself going into those things.
Yes.
The thing about emulation is so important. I want to tip my hat to a beautiful man. His name is Len Schlesinger. He was a professor at Harvard Business School. I was a second year. He was one of the most meaningful people in my life academically. I was a student of his, but I became a mentee of his. He was studying my subject that I was really interested in, which was total quality control and management. But he was doing it in retail and I had come from manufacturing. What he would do, and he was one of the best speakers, and he was one of the best professor lecturers. He was energized and he was always sweating, and he was fucking amazing. But I got to the point where he said to me one day, he said, Keith, I can't go to the National Retail Federation to give this talk. Would you give it for me? But I had watched him so many times that I literally would sit back and I would scribe his talk. And I gave his talk, literally gave his talk, not just his inflections, his manners. I gave his talk. And I learned how to give his talk. And then I earned the right to change it for myself. Right? And so that was the best way for me. It was total mimicry.
Yeah.
But then I adapted it for myself. And I learned my own style, held on to some of his. So, and I suggest, I've got an amazing man that works in our company his name is Ronan, and he wants to be better and better at his speaking. He's doing the same thing for me, and I love it.
Yeah.
He's giving my talks as him, but then he's modifying them.
Yeah, and I'm doing that with one of my Strike Force members, Yanni. Just putting him on stage more and more to give him the experience. Let's put a nail or a stake in the heart of fear 1 second. So the answer to fear,
Practice.
It's natural, is practice. It is practice, and it is allowing yourself. It's what I want to say is allow the emotion to come out fully. It's hand motions, it's volume, it's being confident in yourself. People love that confidence, and they love the empathy that you have for them in this subject. At the end of the day, I'll remember my first TED Talk, actually one of my first TED Talks, my second TED Talk when I gave the abundance talk. And I went and was giving it at the home of Lynn and Norman Lear. And she invited me to come and present it just after Abundance had come out. And I gave what I was working on for TED. And then a common friend, Eric Hirschberg, pulled me aside and he goes, I think I could make it better for you. And we spent the better part of a week re-engineering the talk and me giving it over and over and over again. And it was phenomenally better. And kudos to Eric, who is a brilliant creative himself.
Yeah, he is.
And when I got on stage and I gave that talk, I felt on fire, and I was like on a mission to change the people's mindset there. But I was so confident what I was saying.
Because you had iterated.
It allowed me.
And that's what I was saying earlier. I literally, I remember my TED Talk and getting ready for it, and just that over and over and over again. And I think that until you just get such comfort that you can do it in your sleep.
Yeah.
I think that's critical. The thinking about speaking, I did want to make sure that we also punctuated the mediums. And I do think that one of the things I learned is there was a little bit of a difference between being on this media and being on stage.
And between a small stage and a big stage.
I agree.
Like
like you're talking about being 11 and being big.
Yeah.
I used to do that on television and it looked weird.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't work for television.
So I think it's important to understand your medium. Most of the time what we're talking about
You just look crazy.
You do. You look fucking crazy. I actually remember the very first time I did a CNBC show with myself and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and there were four
this
of
guy's
us.
on speed.
Swear to God, it looked like I've never done cocaine in my life, but I looked like I had just overdosed on cocaine. At the end of the thing, I watched myself. I was like, "Oh, that was so embarrassing." Right? So you do have to recognize
that probably came from nerves.
Well, yes, and it was a medium I was used to.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I was used to being on stage and as an actor, and I was big. And
TV
when
wants an intimate setting.
Yeah, and it's different. So I think people have to be conscious. And let me say another thing. You and I are giving a disproportionate tilt to charisma and energy, etc. But let me suggest, don't let that intimidate you if that's not who you are. And maybe I'm going to take a very antithetical approach to what we just said. There are comedians who are totally different styles and land the joke beautifully.
Yep.
There are some comedians that are deadpan and do a beautiful job of it. There are some, now you don't want to bore people, but I think that all of you could find a way to be a good speaker and honor you. Mm-hmm. You've got to command, you've got to modulate. I think even if you're not going to 11 to 2, if you go to, your volume goes to 8 to 4, that's still going to be important.
Yeah. And by the way, you might be a scientist or a technologist talking about a really important subject, some kind of a breakthrough you've had.
Bill Gates doesn't do what you and I do.
No.
And people listen to him, but he is Bill Gates.
Yeah. But so if you've got really very important and meaningful information to deliver, I think you don't have to be like you said, the charismatic presenter on stage, but you still need to get a connection with the audience.
Yes. Anecdotes, stories.
Opening up with story,
right?
opening
humor.
up. Yeah.
I still see dry professors that use humor beautifully.
Yeah.
Reagan used to do it, right? He was just such a beautiful orator, and he would tell jokes, and it worked, right? So I just want to make sure that we're not intimidating an entire population that don't think that they can be us.
Hey everybody, Peter Diamandis here. I've been asked over and over again, what do I do for my own health? Well, I put it down in this book called Peter's Longevity Practices. It's very readable in just an hour. In the book, I cover longevity diet, exercise, sleep, my annual found upload, meds and supplements, longevity mindset. It's literally consumable in just an hour's time, hopefully to incentivize you to make a difference in your life, to intercept the technologies coming our way. If you want this, it's free. Just check out the link below and download it right now.
Now, you may be an entrepreneur who's got a company of 10 people or a company of 100 people, and being able to stand up in front of that company and give a heartfelt, compelling, drive and purpose, and to ignite that company through a difficult time or a sprint you need to do is equally important. We are emotional beings. We have this emotional connection. Let's talk about how we turn this into a business, because you and I have, and again, you gave me a tremendous gift of insight. So if someone's written a book,
but that's so important. The day I started getting paid for speaking was the day I wrote a book.
yes,
Really getting paid for speaking. And It's interesting because if you are a public speaker and you haven't written a book, you're probably going to get a 10 to 20% of the revenue that you would get than if you wrote a book.
Yeah, a book.
It's just
a book in this matter is a representation that you have a concise body of knowledge, right?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And it's your credential, it's your card. If you don't have a book, the likelihood someone's got to remember who's hiring. I apologize for this. It's a clipboard lady or a clipboard guy. It's like there's somebody 5 layers down in the organization
who's checking boxes
and is working with the bureau to figure out what slate to give the CEO for the event. Of course, it could come down from the CEO, but a lot of the times it's a risk-averse individual looking to qualify who's supposed to be on this stage at this point in time. And so not having a book is almost a disqualification.
Now, you could have a very successful company, or you could have a very successful life experience that the world knows about.
It's a brand.
You better brand.
If you don't have a brand, you need a book.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the mantra. If you don't have a brand, you need a book.
And by the way, when you're being introduced and someone says so-and-so is the author of so-and-so book, they don't need to mention how many copies were sold or anything.
And we talked about it on our other podcast. They will say that it is a best-selling book,
whether it's
even though it's the best-selling in Joe's book list. So you no matter what, you'll be a best-selling author. and you'll be able to have credential. People want to, they want to put you on stage if they feel like you've got a credential.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's so important. The book starts your speaking career. It really does.
It was the case for me.
It was. I think it's the case for so many, and I don't know many examples that can do it without.
And again, this adage.
Podcasters. Again, you have a brand.
Yeah.
If you've got a major podcast that has a great following, again, it's because you have the brand.
Yeah.
It's like having your own TV show.
And there are a few podcasters I know who haven't gone on and written a book.
Right.
The old saying, you don't make money on book sales, you make money on speeches, is very true. So
now we're into the business.
Now into the business. So
can I talk about the first thing that needs to happen, which
Sure.
is, what is your topic? And I want to use you and me as an example here.
Okay.
You have found a topic. Now look, you weren't searching for a topic to get a good speaking business, therefore you picked abundance.
Yeah,
that's not
did
how
not
it
happen
worked.
that way.
But let's just talk about,
because my topic early on for a good part of my
space.
life was space.
Guess what kind of a speaking business you would have with a space topic?
Zippo.
I don't know, but guess what kind of a paid speaking business you would have with space?
Yeah.
Zippo, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So JPL would hire you to speak, but and MIT would hire you to
get a free
speak.
coffee.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but let's dissect a bit your abundance topic, which I think is really important.
Interesting, and I was kind of shocked that it became a successful, viable business topic.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just because of the purity of your intent of the message. You weren't engineering it for that.
Yeah.
But as I looked at somebody who I helped to craft their speaking business, and then all of a sudden I saw your speaking fee be double mine.
Sorry.
I was like, what is about that? So I started dissecting, and I was like, what is it about Peter's speaking business that has taken wind? And here's my analysis.
Please.
And the first thing is, if you look at who's putting you on stage, there's a CEO putting you on stage saying, I want you to kick the butt of my people to be deeply curious, inspired to be over the edge in terms of what could be next, not sitting on our laurels, but going big and going next, because every CEO wants that.
Yeah.
The other thing you do is you bring a very positive message. When you leave the stage, people have walked in saying the world is shit. And and it's falling apart. And they leave saying, oh my God, the world is abundant. It's amazing, right? So you've done two extraordinary things, and it's not a surprise. It's not how you engineered it, but it's not a surprise that you've created that. Now, why do I say that? Because when you're thinking about the business, if you're literally creating a speaking business for the sake of a business, then you need to ask yourself, is that message going to resonate with which audiences? So I'm a former marketer.
Yeah.
So I would first ask the question, which audiences are hiring? So who hires speakers? Sales organizations hire them for their big sales offsites every year.
Yeah.
Leadership offsites, which is the big company meeting with the top 100,000 people or whatever it is. Hire
Customer
them,
engagement.
right? And then external customer events, like the big event where you bring all of your customers together.
Like Salesforce.
And then associations, which are hiring it for their members. And that's either a personal message, like you're going to get a sports hero that everyone's interested in, but you could find something that general consumers would be interested in. So you really just think about who are the people hiring speaking and ask you, what gift are you giving that organization by virtue of you walking on stage? And that's an important alignment. Where I have gone with my talks is I call my talks challenge talks, because again, my brand is partially to inspire. I go on stage and I say to an audience, and this is what I have sold my speech to, where do you want your people's behavior to change over the next 6 to 9 months in order to meet your strategy? Peter's the guy that'll help your strategy and technology get on path. I'm the guy that comes behind and says, where are the behaviors of your people? And I believe that anybody in that room could be the tipping point of the transformation of the company. That's why I wrote Leading Without Authority. I'm trying to say that everybody in the room, you could take the manifestation of the strategy of the company, and you could go out and build the relationships and the vision to make it happen. and your career would be on fire,
Yeah.
right? And by the way, you are a leader of a team that is yet to know that they're following you. That team is the people inside of the organization that are going to follow you and your vision on how to meet the strategy of the company. So that idea, I call it a challenge talk.
Yeah.
And it crushes it out there.
Yeah.
Because you come on one day, and we've done this actually, where you've spoken, then I've spoken. You come on one day and you get the organization to see where its strategy and its technology needs to be. I come in and I see, how can an individual ignite transformation by changing their behavior and managing teams differently?
Tactically, let's say you've written your book, or you had this life experience, or you had something that creates a brand that gives you a message that is super credible and people want to hear, right? One of the things that you taught me was, you said, listen, you introduced me to Leading Authorities, one of the speaking agencies that still to this day we have a great relationship with. And you said, go to their office in Washington, D.C. and meet with their team and give your talk there.
I also said, buy them lunch.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not sure if I did.
You show up, offer to buy them lunch, because there's a lot of people that want to get on their radar, say, hey, listen, I'd love to buy you all lunch. And all I want you to do is listen to 20 minutes of what I have to share.
Yeah. I mean, how many agencies are out there?
I think there's, first of all, there's hundreds.
Yes.
Because as that world has grown, any individual can be an agency. But let's call it 12 to 15 important agencies. And I'm not suggesting, by the way, that the biggest agencies are the most important. Washington Speakers Bureau is not an agency that
Was
you
it
should
Harry
be.
Winston? Is that the
It's
other
one
one?
in New York, yeah.
Yeah.
But some of the biggest
are,
ones aren't necessarily where you're going to make a dent.
those will be the agencies that typically have the
Barack Obama's, the Clinton.
Yeah, exactly, the ex-politicos. But there are agencies that have either specialization to subspecializations, and going and building a relationship there.
That's it.
Because at the end of the day, when the agent, part of that agency, is on the phone with a large marketing event or membership event, they say, hey, let me point you at this individual, check out this website and let me know, because I've heard them speak and they're amazing.
Yep.
Right?
Now, let's talk about how to do that. Now, this is where my never eat alone hat comes on.
Yeah.
You're not building a relationship with a bureau. You're building a relationship with 3 agents.
Yes.
And the way you do that is you start to connect by doing that first outreach. You get their email. You follow up. You ask them questions about it. You ask them questions about your talk. So they've just heard you give your teaser, and then you start a relationship. Hey, what advice do you have? What did you think about the messaging? Where do you think that messaging is going to play well? And by the way, do you have anybody that you're thinking about that you think would be great for that? Then the first time they put you up for a potential talk, whether you got it or not, I want you to send them flowers, an Amazon card.
That's what I used to do.
Just say thank you.
That's what
thank you so much. I didn't get the talk. Yeah, send them cash, right? And by the way, they're paid by their bosses. This is direct to them, the individual, right?
Yeah.
Here, I just want to thank you. And remember their birthdays. And find out, I used to
It's all the stuff that you teach.
It's everything.
Right.
It's all of the relationship component. I had a woman who ran my speaking business for a while, Jordan. And Jordan was a great leverage for me with those bureaus. And she richly got to know those folks. She was sending birthday presents that were so intimate. Like she would send a baseball card to somebody that she had researched. That person's hero was that individual, and they were a baseball fan, and a framed, baseball card was sent to them. That kind of intimacy. Now, you and I have gotten to the stage where we're probably not doing those tactics anymore.
But in the beginning, it matters, right? And so, Jordan, for you, Connie still runs my speaking business.
And that is important, that if you're not going to hire 12 people, if you're not going to go with an agency, to have a right hand, whether that's your administrative assistant, maybe we can talk about that a little bit. What is the role of your admin or yourself if you've got the time?
Well, Connie, who runs my speaking business, used to be my admin. She used to be my executive assistant. And as my speaking business started growing, at one point, I got her a second EA, Esther, and I said, Connie, would you just go and run the speaking business alone?
Yeah.
And I sent her to a negotiation school, and she's done extraordinarily well for me and for herself. And then Esther became my EA, and I'm my chief of staff.
But this person isn't. They could easily just be a booker, a transactional logistics person.
But Connie is a relationship person,
that's
right?
That's important.
She develops relationships with the agents as well, right? And she's my first line of defense as well. Now, I get a lot of inbound emails, people who are members of my communities or my organizations or donors, and Peter, can you speak?
Mostly for free.
Well, the requests come in for free. I mean, everybody is asking, and I get hundreds of requests a year. And my way of looking at it is, if I do something, I'm trading against time with my 12-year-old boys, or trading against my companies. And so the answer is no, unless they meet a threshold. And that threshold is either it's extraordinarily meaningful for me or in my companies, or I'm going to take a certain number of paid gigs per year, and it's going to be one of the paid gigs. So Connie goes in and will say, I just got a request from a very high-level politician to come and speak at an event. And I'm not going to say, listen, here's my speaking rate. But Connie can go in very respectfully and say, so-and-so, here's Peter's speaking rates, and he could be free on that day. Is that an option? And going through that, but it gives me a separation in that.
But I want to level down for the viewing audience for a second.
But I hope they'll get there.
Yeah, but I also want to give them the opportunity. If you're an entrepreneur in the healthcare space, and you're building a business that sells into hospital systems, there's a lot of really cool places that you could be developing a speaking business. Now, here's the thing. If the Association of Hospital Administrators, if you went to them normally and said, I would like to speak on your stage, and you have a business that sells into hospital administrators, they'll say yes, and you can pay us $200,000 for a sponsorship, right?
Exactly.
But if you write a book and you write some articles and develop a sense of thought leadership, and you have a $30,000 speaking fee associated with your name, you could probably get on that stage at a minimum for free.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yeah, no, listen,
Right?
there's
So
no
I want to
question.
talk about
being on a stage in which it's great for your company or your organization.
But that little strategy is important. I want for people to understand.
Yeah.
You went from
Being a sponsor.
Being a sponsor. When I was at Deloitte as chief marketing officer, every time I wanted to show up and speak, people wanted me to pay them. And it wasn't long after that when I wrote a book that I started getting paid.
Yes.
And so it's a really important flip to be able to have, and they're not obviously.
And by the way, if you haven't watched Keith and I talking about how to write a New York Times bestselling book, go watch that podcast next, because the two are intimately connected.
Yeah.
And if you have, please leave comments. We'd love to know what you thought. Was it useful for you on how to write a book, or is this podcast useful for you? We'd love to know.
Everybody, I want to take a short break from our episode to talk about a company that's very important to me and could actually save your life or the life of someone that you love. The company is called Fountain Life, and it's a company I started years ago with Tony Robbins and a group of very talented physicians. Most of us don't actually know what's going on inside our body. We're all optimists. Until that day when you have a pain in your side, you go to the physician in the emergency room and they say, listen, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have this stage 3 or 4 going on. And it didn't start that morning. It probably was a problem that's been going on for some time, but because we never look, we don't find out. So what we built at Fountain Life was the world's most advanced diagnostic centers. We have 4 across the US today, and we're building 20 around the world. These centers give you a full body MRI, a brain vasculature, an AI-enabled coronary CT looking for soft plaque, a DEXA scan, a GRAIL blood cancer test, a full executive blood workup. It's the most advanced workup you'll ever receive. 150 gigabytes of data that then go to our AIs and our physicians to find any disease at the very beginning.
when it's solvable. You're going to find out eventually. Might as well find out when you can take action. Fountain Life also has an entire side of therapeutics. We look around the world for the most advanced therapeutics that can add 10, 20 healthy years to your life, and we provide them to you at our centers. So if this is of interest to you, please go and check it out. Go to fountainlife.com/Peter. When Tony and I wrote our New York Times bestseller, Life Force, we had 30,000 people who reached out to us for Fountain Life memberships. If you go to fountainlife.com/Peter, we'll put you to the top of the list. Really, it's something that is, for me, one of the most important things I offer my entire family, the CEOs of my companies, my friends. It's a chance to really add decades onto our healthy lifespans. Go to fountainlife.com/Peter. It's one of the most important things I can offer to you as one of my listeners. All right, let's go back to our episode.
It's one of the things that for me is important is this work-life integration, because a speaking business can be a bit addictive, right? If you start getting paid to go and speak, and you're flying around the world, and it can take you away from the normal course of your business. And so there's got to be a balance. A lot of times, if you get a speaking engagement, they'll pay for your travel. I'm always asking to have a second person go with me, right? So I don't go to any of these events on my own. I'll bring one of my Strike Force members, Yanni, because a lot of times, a lot of the business opportunities are occurring just before, just after, and having someone there.
And in bulk. And you can keep track.
I mean, you get off stage and you're mob. Right. And so being able to say yes and talk to Yanni and, basically it helps a lot.
Yeah. Can I, on this simple little thing called travel expenses, what I found, and I think you might have found the same thing, is it's actually more efficient to have a standardized travel expense that you say, buyout. It's a buyout. It's like, my speaking fee is $50K and my domestic travel is $3,750, right. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you might say, on a private jet, wherever your level is that you can ask for it.
I'll never forget, I was trying to get a particular well-known tech entrepreneur to come and speak. This was years ago. And he came back and he said, my fee is $100K and a private jet. And I was like, WTF? Holy shit. Really? Like, who is this person?
Yeah. It's actually funny. I did something recently. I was helping a friend of mine who's the CEO trying to get some pretty prominent people to come and speak at his event. But it was a small event. It was only 30 CHROs.
Yeah.
And these people wanted a lot of money. And I said, I have an idea. Let's ask people who live, and this event was in Santa Barbara. I said, let's ask people who live in San Francisco, major people who live in San Francisco. Let's not pay them, but let's send a helicopter for them. And it was amazing. We got them to say yes.
Yeah.
The idea that they were getting a helicopter sent to bring them down to the event and back.
A VVIP experience.
But we didn't have to pay them, so we ended up as a lot cheaper. But this idea of travel buyout is something people should know. It became easier than just tracking all the expenses. It was a chunk of change that you got. So you have an international travel buyout number. You have a domestic travel buyout number. Yeah.
So COVID hits.
Yeah.
And we're not traveling anyplace.
And our speaking fees for about a month or two went to zero.
Yes, they did.
And people were like, $5,000, you can come and speak at our event virtually. Yeah. And isn't it interesting? It went back up that our virtual talks are now getting paid what our old speaking fees used to be.
Well, I'm not sure it's gotten up to the full one, but a virtual talk for at a third the price for an hour. You're in your pajamas and slippers and giving your keynote.
At least under here you are, right?
Yeah, at least in half of it. And that's amazing. And so the ability, and I actually enjoy it. It can be as interactive, and I can deliver real value.
Yeah.
What else do people need to know about setting your rates? So, listen, in the very beginning, maybe when your books just come out, you might be doing a number of talks for free, right? TED's never going to pay you. If you can get on the TED stage, we'll talk about it a little bit more. But otherwise, my speaking fees early on were probably 10, 20K. And that was amazing found money.
And that's still, I think,
Significant.
that amount of money, if you get to be a $15,000 speaker, that's sort of the first rate.
Yeah.
I think the first, when you're a real speaker, you're getting paid $15K. The next level is 30, I find. And I think the next level goes to 50 to 60, 50, let's say. And then you're up to 75. And then you're at 100, which is a very rarefied group of individuals. But if you really think about those, I think those demarcations are about right in the people that I know. What becomes important is to ask yourself, you always want to use the price to set your days, right? So, at 15, you could probably be speaking all the time. If you're really going to hustle, you're going to do all the stuff with marketing we were talking about, get your butt out there, work the bureaus. You can speak a lot at 15K.
And one engagement can lead to 3 to, you have an exponential
The one right
growth.
engagement, particularly if it's associations. If you go and work at speak at an association, you've got 1,000 people in the audience, each of whom could go back and say, we should hire that person versus speaking at just one company. But the 15K, what I did was I was finding myself speaking too much. And I had to up it to 30. This was back in the mid 2000s. I had to up it to 30 to keep my days down.
Yeah.
My
there's
ultimate
no question.
business was the same.
I meet with Connie once a year. We set our pricing, and I ask her not to tell me about the gigs that come in too low. So I'm not negotiating.
You and I both would be like, well, it's 60.
Can I rationalize that?
Yeah, it's 60K, because 60K.
I mean, it's a person's salary for a year.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Exactly. It's a house when I grew up.
Yeah. So the reality is you need to titrate that. And especially if you have a family or you're an entrepreneur running a company, balancing that is really important. But if you're at the beginning of your career and you've done something extraordinary, being on the road and being able to share your message and get paid for it is amazing. Amazing. The problem is I'll come into Las Vegas for an association meeting and I'll arrive at midnight. I'll have this incredible suite. My talk is at 8:00 in the morning, and then I'll leave. And it's like, what a waste.
What a waste of the glamour and the glitz. I agree.
One of the things also is at this point in our lives, we get to cherry pick what to speak for. You should care about who you're speaking for.
Yeah.
And I found myself in a few times where I'm like, how did I end up speaking to this audience? I have no connection to them. And yes, it's a great payday, but I should have said no. Right? So I think that being authentic and being able to really feel in your heart that you're going to help these individuals is super important. What other lessons can we teach here?
I wanted to think a little bit about free talks, because in one regard, it's easy to say you shouldn't do them. But let's talk about where I have found free talks have really had a return on investment.
Please.
No question. A TED Talk.
Yeah.
It has the massive return on investment.
You want to talk about TED 1 second first?
Sure. But I want to come back to other free talks and how one thinks about those. But let's talk about TED.
So TED,
it's still the shining star
it's the
on
premier
the hill. It's amazing.
Right? TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. Right. And it is.
I don't even think they claim that anymore.
Yeah. Probably
it's like
not.
It's just TED. I mean, what Chris has done.
Yeah. Chris Anderson.
Chris Anderson. You and I know each other from TED before Chris took it over.
Yep.
And that man and his team that has created the TED Talks, the media business outside of a single conference. That, by the way, is a great example of abundance. By giving away your product for free, you exponentialized
they did it more than one way, right? So TED.com is where you can go and watch all the talks, and people say, well, why would you want to go and pay $10,000 or $15,000 or $30,000 if you're a patron and go to TED if you watch the talks for free?
1 month later, you're going to see them for free.
And of course, that's not why you're there. You're there to meet everybody else and to experience it live.
Listen, I'm here right now because of TED. You and I are together because of TED.
Yeah.
Some of my best, dearest friends and my richest relationships I have in my life was because of the TED membership and the TED community. And I am so grateful for that organization and the community that's created. Getting on that stage, I hope, there's become a better mechanism than back in the day. And back in the day, I think it was, pixie dust and
who you and how your name or a book or topic came across the right person at the right time.
Which couldn't be engineered. It could be a bit, but it was very difficult to. But now they've got an entire feeder system called the TEDx program.
Yeah.
And it actually does work. I mean, you can be no one and give a local TEDx talk and have that rise up through the ranks, through the likes of the system. And the next thing you know, you're on the main TED stage.
So Salim and I talk about TEDx in our EXO 2.0 book, right? As an incredible exponential organization. So how do you go from this once a year event, which TED used to be for how many people, 1,500 people in the audience there, to all of a sudden reaching hundreds of thousands, millions of individuals through TEDx talks around the world, right?
And they have their podcasting series, et cetera. So I would just say, you and I both are super fans.
Yep.
We both have so much to
respect the quality of what they've done.
Extraordinary. And I would say the way to go about, all of you should be worried about your TED Talk. 100%. That's it. It's as important as a book.
Yeah. And your book, how would you present your book in 20 minutes or less, or 18 minutes? What is it? Is it 18 minutes?
Well, I think it changes. I mean,
anyway.
My TED Talk was 12 minutes back in the day.
Okay. But I think if you can't convey your purpose, your mission, your MTP, your essence of what you're in that.
Well, there's the Ben Franklin. Sorry, I wish if I had more time, this letter would have been shorter.
Yes.
So start to work your TED Talk, even though you don't have a place to give it yet.
Yeah.
Then,
or throw a TEDx conference. You can apply. I was going
to say, then get involved in the TEDx community. And
it's sort of the modern day tech version of Toastmasters in one sense.
It is, at a hypered up level. So that's one. Now, the other thing about free talks is, I'll tell you, this is my alumni university. Speaking at the reunion has sometimes been the best feeder for my speaking engagements.
Interesting.
Because particularly with my alma mater at business school, I was able to give talks to my classmates who were like, wow, that was a great talk. And you're dealing with an entire group of individuals that are running businesses, right?
Yeah.
Your stages, right, is, I'm sure, an immensely rich opportunity for a bunch of entrepreneurs to see somebody speak on stage and say, wow, I should have them come in. So there are places, if, as I was mentioning earlier, associations, if the organization, if the forum is a group where the audience are buyers of speaking engagements, then it could be worth doing free talks.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want people to consider.
Or if you care deeply about,
of course,
the audience.
Of the audience and the topic.
Right.
You're mission driven.
Yeah. Right. So I am whenever I can deliver to entrepreneurs and graduate students and so forth. I mean, the challenge is, I think people don't realize there's a lot going on in our lives. So being able to pick up, you're always trading time, right? The one thing we all have in common is 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, 365 in a year. Yeah. And it's how you use your time, which is everything. It's our most precious resource right now.
I've gotten to the stage where I could probably only do 1 or 2 talks a year that are purely,
gratis.
Generous and gratis, without a motive for doing it, which is, well, this is an audience that could be more speaking engagements or more team coaching or such, et cetera. But I do think it's important. What I say to my team is, this is our channel strategy.
Yes.
And my team is responsible for identifying who are the associations that you should speak in front of for your channel strategy. Now, this is where book helps, because if you've written a book, and if you haven't seen it, we've got a really great podcast about booking.
About writing books.
About writing books.
Yeah.
If you write a book, it is all of a sudden a permission to speak. And so if you think about what free talks you should be given where, writing a book for the next 6 months, it's very funny, because if I reached out to Salesforce and said, in Dreamforce next year, I've got a message I really think would be great. Okay, that's interesting. We'll put you on the list.
Yep.
No urgency. But if I reached out to Salesforce and said, I've got a book coming out the month the Dreamforce is out or the month after, and I could tease out my message, which is about to be published before anywhere else on your stage, and I'd be happy to sign books, all of a sudden there's urgency about having me as a speaker.
Yeah.
So I know of a guy who's just a brilliant speaker. I don't know if he would want me to say his name or not because his strategy is so beautiful. He writes a book a year just for his speaking business. And he does it just as a machine. And every year he writes a book, he publishes it, he markets it, and that's his next. And as a result, unlike guys like you and me, who I suspect the amount of time that we get invited back to the same stage one year after another is almost never.
Yeah, at best
Unless
it's every
like
3 years.
friends like A360, etc. He gets invited back to the same stage. He's got a different message every year.
Sure.
Because he's engineered his books around his speaking engagement in that way.
Other platform stages are YPO chapters and EO chapters and such.
If you, so again, EO, YPO, but the actual chapters don't have a lot of money for speaking engagements, right?
They
Maybe
do have
5K, 10K.
They have an education budget, and sometimes they'll group 3 or 4 chapters together and create an event.
Right. But then the members, you have to ask yourself, at YPO, certainly the membership has the ability potentially to do speaking engagements for 50K, 15K. But as you go down to EO or Vistage or other organizations, they may not have. You've got to ask yourself, is the audience used to paying my speaking fee? Right? Now, one of the other things that I've done, it's interesting, people think of speakers and they think of themselves as hiring speakers or not hiring speakers. What's the difference between helping them facilitate or helping them in a leadership offsite versus a speaking engagement? I've been able to open up the number of engagements. I know I still get paid 50K.
Right.
I still do the same prep, but I've now sold myself not as, are you hiring a speaker? But when are you giving your next leadership offsite? I'd like to present some of my research.
Yes.
It's a nuance, but this idea of selling yourself as a speaker, you've actually, by the way, you've usurped the bureaus, you've usurped the clipboard people, and you've gone straight to a leader who might think, you know what, I don't normally have an outside speaker at my team meeting, but this topic would be interesting. Sure, I'll free up 15, 20, 30, whatever it is for my team. So you can actually create a speaker slot that didn't exist before by virtue of going direct.
Shall we summarize?
Yeah. So inspiring thinking. You do this one first.
Okay, I'll go first. So speaking has a lot of extraordinary benefits for you personally. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur and a leader, it's a chance for you to become a thought leader on stages around the world. You can make a great living at it. It's a way to present your company, your ideas. And so there's a lot of elements of being, I call it a platform or a keynote speaker. Fear often stops people. And there's one solution to fear, and that is practice, 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 and speak about something that comes from the heart, right? If you're speaking with your mind and your brain, you're going to get caught up. If you're speaking from the heart, for me, a lot of my successes were emulating great speakers on stage who I watched, and I'm studying you when you're on my Abundance 360 stage or Tony's on my stage or vice versa. It's like, fascinating the way they did that, how they paused even a second longer than I would have paused, or their volume, or their motions and their hand motions, and it becomes like incredibly. It shocks. Oh, another thing that I love doing when I'm on stage is breaking the barrier. I will jump off the stage and walk into the audience. Yeah. Right? It changes the entire dynamic.
The camera people hate that.
I go and check with them first. I said, I may jump off the stage, and they say, well, stay away from that speaker, and that speaker's going to get the feedback, but that's fine. And so, and you're looking to build a relationship rather than just, hit and run. Can you give your slides away to that audience? And can you, in fact, keep a relationship going with that audience? But it's there to serve. those are my thoughts off the bat.
Yeah, well, look,
You
as
go.
a good summary, I'm not going to be redundant. You've said so many good things in your summary.
I stole some of yours.
That's okay. It's a good summary. That's what we're here for, the inspiring summary. Where I want to go with it is maybe just a little different. And maybe this is just because the way I think about it. I think about my speaking business really as a lifestyle for my future.
Interesting, yeah.
The more that I invest in my brand today, I mean, the $2 million that I invested around some research that I did during the pandemic actually ended up being $5 million
Wow.
at the end of it. You know what I was thinking about? I busted my ass during that 2 to 3 year period doing research about the future of work. I invested my own money and other brands' money. What I was thinking about was, this is going to give me the permission when I'm 75 to 80 years old to go around the world and step on stage, and my brand legacy will still be there, and I'll be relevant. And my partner and I will be able to travel and have a beautiful life because I will have built a brand and be meaningful to people. And it's the way I want to live my life.
Fascinating.
And so that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about what I consider the nirvana of my retirement. And I think that's what I would encourage any of you, if you could start to build your brand and start to get permission to speak in people's stages and in their companies, it could be a beautiful way to live your life. And that would be my wrap-up statement.
I think a few points you made as well. Remember to tell stories.
Yeah.
Open with a story, a personal anecdote.
Authenticity.
Yeah.
Variability,
of your voice level. From
and the last thing is relationships. What kept coming up throughout this for the both of us is people, whether it's bureaus, it's about relationships. It's about agents. It's not about bureaus.
Yeah.
It's about individuals. It's Sally from XYZ Speakers Bureau who has gone out on a limb and said Peter would be the right person, and then was rewarded for it, both by your success, but also by the flowers and the gratitude. To build that relationship is important. And also, I'll give you one last one, is don't be afraid to ask. My old man used to say, don't ever be afraid to ask. The worst anybody could ever say is no. If you've got a buddy that you know is a bigwig in a company, just say to them, hey, who runs the events that you do? Yeah. I would love someday to get a chance to bring my message to your organization. What's wrong with that? I mean, that kind of just putting yourself out there and asking is a great way to get your speaking business, maybe even just started. What we didn't talk about, by the way, I know this is the wrap up, but what we didn't talk about is your speaker reel. Important idea. And if you've never done any speaking before, asking friends to be able to get on the stage in front of their company, but with a video camera. Yeah. So that you could get it videoed, and you could get 2 or 3 of them videoed and put it together in a reel. It establishes you.
Yeah. At the beginning of your career, when people don't know you don't have a reputation, you don't have a bunch of.
You need the reel.
Yeah. You need something to demonstrate what's your style, your capacity, capabilities, and so forth. Yeah. So, Keith Ferrazzi, folks who want to hire you to go speak.
Yeah, Ferrazzi Greenlight.
FerrazziGreenlight.com, 2 R's, 2 Z's.
Yeah, indeed.
Awesome. And they can follow you on which social media?
LinkedIn's probably best.
Amazing. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for the gift you gave me a decade ago. That launched me. I'll never forget where that lunch, sitting outside, and you were so generous in teaching me these ropes that we've now conveyed on. It changed my life. It truly was a rising tide. I hope it is for many others.
Yeah, good pay it forward.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Brother.